It's time to talk about Boeing. We got some big news, maybe the biggest, most material news for Boeing in the past couple of years with some massive changes in leadership. I've got Lou Whiteman here, an expert in the airline industry, in the aerospace industry, to help talk through what's going on. A few things investors absolutely need to know about Boeing right now. Whether Lou thinks Boeing is investable at this point. If not, what is it going to take? Plus, we'll talk about some other stocks that Lou thinks are interesting to invest in this particular area of the market. I'm Jason Hall. This is Investing Unscripted. This video is sponsored by The Motley Fool. If you're looking for even more great stock ideas, check out our special link. It's fool.com/unscripted. The Motley Fool is going to give you its 10 best stocks to buy right now. Please check out that link. It'll be worth your time. Hey, Lou.
How you doing, Jason?
I'm good. I'm good. Still better than Boeing investors over the past few years. And I'm laughing. It's gallows humor. Hundreds and hundreds of people have died. Let's say that this is a very serious topic, but a lot of people, including myself, have been waiting for Boeing to get its act together. And maybe we'll look back in a few years and say this was the moment that finally started to happen. Lou, what exactly has happened?
Yeah, we sure hope so. What the news that's actually out this morning is that CEO Dave Calhoun and a whole bunch of other people will be stepping down. It's going to be towards the end of the year. They're going to find a CEO replacement first. But Calhoun, Stan Deal, who's president and CEO of Boeing Commercial, he's out immediately. The chairman of the board, Larry Kellner, the former CEO of Continental Airlines, he will not stand for re-election, so we'll have a new chair of the board. This is the beginning, hopefully, of a much needed clean sweep as Boeing tries to start over again. Calhoun, of course, came in with the idea that he was going to be the change they need after the initial 737 problems. But he had been on the board since 2009.
He was one of the leaders of the company's strategy for a
Yeah.
decade before the first of these terrible incidents happened.
Yeah. So this is at least a sign that they're trying to say, look, we are going to start over again, or so we hope.
Let's go back. I think it's important just to highlight the timeline of things that have happened with Boeing that have got to this point, how bad it really is to really set that stage and what Boeing needs to do from here, besides just putting new nameplates on top of desks in Mahogany Row. What do they actually need to do to turn the business around?
Yeah, so this all, of course, goes back to 2018. The 737 MAX, which was supposed to be, at the time it was debuted, it was going to be the most successful airframe ever in terms of sales. It was this much needed, more fuel efficient version of the small single aisle jet that it's the bulk of aviation.
Right, the
Um,
narrow body that
yes,
does it's
that
the
does most of the miles.
right.
Yeah. And yeah, of course, as you mentioned, late October 2018, a MAX went down, a second went down in early 2019. The program was grounded for 18 months. It turned out to be a pretty embarrassing time for Boeing, too, and not just costly and obviously the tragedy, but we learned a lot about the internal controls or lack of internal controls that may have led to that. Things have spiraled since then. In the time since then, we have had the Dreamliners, the 787, which is a huge, the kind of the last big wide body for Boeing. That has been grounded multiple times due to engineering questions or structural questions. The 777X, which is their next version of their biggest plane, the long haul champion, that is years delayed to the point where the customer that's half of its order book has said, we don't even know if we want it anymore. And now, just in the last few months, the 737 MAX has been front and center again because of that Alaska Airlines incident where a door plug fell off in midair. It turned out nobody had screwed the bolts on. It was just that simple of an error, oversimplifying a bit. But so just years and years of spiraling questions about not just quality issues, but the process issues that have caused quality issues really
Yeah,
kind of
I think that process
yeah.
part is important because we can circle back just to this Alaska Air incident. There was no record of who would have even have been responsible for resecuring this door after the repairs were completed with that particular plane. So really, if it gets back down to process in a very significant way.
The system is broken. There's a lot of good people. You don't want to blame individuals, but somewhere things have just broken down across the company. And yeah, it's time for someone else to give this a try because there's no reason to have confidence in the people who have been running.
I'm going to share this on the screen. Stock performance over this period from September 2018. So roughly right before the first of these incidents happened, Boeing's stock price minus dividends, I guess it's paid a little bit of dividend at the beginning of that period,
It used to. Yeah.
but not anymore. Even with the little dividends before they halted their dividend, stocks down 43%. The S&P 500 is essentially doubled from that period. And of course, the obvious comp is Airbus. Airbus stock is it's underperformed the market, gained 56% during that time. But the bottom line is that as much as there have been issues, Lou, I think it's important to point out that the biggest challenge to Boeing's financial results has been its inability to produce planes over this period. Number one, being grounded, regulators stepping in, and then stepping in more forcefully since the Alaska Air incident that's throttling its ability to produce planes. But that's not the only thing. Let's talk about Boeing's inability so far to scale up production, even as it's begun to come back online with customers who were begging for aircraft.
Yes, if you go back a decade ago, I mentioned that this was supposed to be the biggest selling the most successful airframe of all time, the biggest selling. If you go back to 2015 or so, mid last decade, they were talking about being at least in the high 50s in terms of rate per month for the 737 by now, possibly higher. They were hoping to get to 57, 58 by almost about when COVID came. So they might be
Right.
higher now.
So
Right
600 to
now,
700 aircraft a year roughly was their target.
right, right. Right now, they are hoping to get to and stay at 38 per month. So
Yeah.
that's just where we stand versus where we hope to be. That's huge because for one thing, you saw it's the interesting thing, Jason, about that chart is that the initial grounding didn't really sink the stock. People
No.
were numb to that going into, okay, sometimes things happen and it's never put the company out of business before. It was really when COVID hit and then all of a sudden nobody wanted planes of any kind when people started really taking this seriously. Boeing went and basically mortgaged every asset they had to make sure they wouldn't run out of money if COVID went on a long time. To put numbers by it, and you can pull up the chart and look at the debt, but they had maybe just under $11 billion in debt in 2018. That's at 52 billion today. So they've gone from 11 to 50 in just a few years.
I'm going to take Airbus off of here just so we can look at Boeing. But again, this is Boeing, and we saw its cash, of course, went up when it took out all that debt, and it steadily has depleted it. And again, I want to
Yeah,
put Airbus on here just to have that comp. You can see
right.
what's happened. Airbus's debt is in green. It didn't jump near as much, and it has come down substantially more.
I think it's just something too, as someone if you want to look at the stock today, to keep in mind, it looks cheap. You have a global duopoly. You have massive demand. Conservative estimates are global demand for air travel will increase 2, 3, 4% annually for the next 20, 30 years. You have order books in the tens of thousands. You have Airbus. They can't take much more share from Boeing if they want to because they are maxed out in terms of their production. But when you look at that chart and see it down 50%, it's very important to look at the enterprise value too, because part of the story here is all of that debt they've taken on. The answer to that is sell more planes, bring cash in, pay down the debt, get back to normal. Now, we just talked, they were hoping to sell 50 or 60 airframes a month. If they're now hoping to sell 38, even in the best case scenario, even if all goes well from here, you are talking a very long process just to get back to normal. And really, the stock isn't as cheap as it looks when you look at that debt right now. It's just a really hard thing to get behind until we really know things are in the clear. There isn't another one more thing. And they have time to rebuild the balance sheet that has been totally obliviated.
As you were saying, so you look at the entire capital stack, and it's definitely a different story. But the other part of it is part of the way that Boeing got into this situation is financial engineering seemed to become far more important than actual aerospace engineering, which led to the issue. And so what that means too is that if you look at the Boeing of 5 years ago, you get fully clear of everything that's happened. Boeing was very profit optimized. And the Boeing that emerges from this as a healthier, stronger business is probably not going to be as profit optimized as the Boeing that entered that because it can't be. It simply
Yeah.
can't be because everything that's happened over the past several years that's gotten to this point, Lou.
All right, I'll give you good news and maybe a question mark from what we know so far. The new board chair is going to be someone who has only been on the board since 2020, Steve Mollenkopf, the former CEO of Qualcomm. So that's good. That is someone who came in with a fresh set of eyes. The
And you need some
replacement,
continuity. So it does make sense
yeah,
that right
yeah,
now you need somebody that's been on the board for a while.
someone who wasn't there with Calhoun saying, yeah, bonus, bonus, bonus from 2009 through 2020. That's a good first step, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the board. The replacement for Stan Deal, the head of Boeing Commercial, Stephanie Pope, she's currently chief operating officer. She's very well thought of inside the company, and she's known as more someone who will question authority. But she has been with the company 30 years. So it's, I don't know, a wait and see there. She, like I say, she gets good marks from insiders who are fed up with a lot of the things going on,
And
but
she's
she
and she
is
was
an
there
insider.
during good Boeing.
She was there in good Boeing, but she was there all the way down too. So
Yeah.
she has ridden the ride. I'm really curious to see who they get in. I
Yeah.
have it. This isn't a long term answer, but the first call I would make today would be a guy who used to work there and used to have the seat that Stephanie Pope has now as head of Boeing Commercial, and that's a guy named Alan Mulally,
Yeah.
who
He did
you
pretty good things
probably
over at Ford too.
yeah, great things at Ford, did really well at Boeing. He's 78. He's not a long-term answer here. But if you want someone who A will restore credibility just with investors and buy them time with customers because he has a good reputation. And B, what he did at Ford was he took a look at process and he made process better. He didn't just say, let's make it, look, let's extract more cash out of it. But the famous story at Ford was he made all the Ford execs start driving Ford cars. Just that was his focus on quality. He wanted the CFO to be really annoyed with where the cigarette lighter was when he tried to reach down and get it on his drive home. It's just simple little things there, but you need someone with a credibility for investors, and you need someone who is going to just take a look at production and say, why are we being stupid here? And I think Mullally has the gravitas to do both of those things. If he would take the job, I would love to see him there for a couple years just to make sure the ship doesn't capsize and it actually starts going in the right direction.
Directionally, I agree with you, whether Mullally would be either interested or available. Lou, I think you and I agree here that there's a lot that still needs to happen before moving forward with an investment in Boeing. Where is a good place to invest in? Because all of the tailwinds, all of those realities are still there. The growth of demand for commercial aviation globally is, there are strong tailwinds for multiple decades to come. Where would you invest money if you were looking to invest today?
So I'll give you two ideas a little different. One kind of for the moment, one long term. For the moment, for your portfolio contest, one of the companies I picked was RTX, the former Raytheon Technologies and United Technologies. They had a very similar quality issue last year. Their Pratt and Whitney engines, basically every one of them on the Airbus planes have to be taken off and inspected. It's going to cost billions of dollars and take years to get right. But they have really set the standard for how you deal with a crisis and make sure it's a one-time thing. I think if you want to buy and run, the reason I picked them for the contest is I think that as the market realizes, wow, this isn't Boeing, you are going to see the stock go up this year. So I think over the next year or so, if you want a kind of bargain stock or a stock that's been beaten down that can get back to its natural highs and ride this wave, I really like RTX. I don't like them so much long term. If you just want to set it and forget it, TransDive's so exposed to the aftermarket or spare parts, which is so important as this industry grows, because yes, you need new planes, but you also have to use planes longer. They are a parts business. TDG is the ticker. Very good performer, 10-year performer off the charts. They just do things very well. They have a lot of competitive advantages. They are a set it and forget it stock for me. Raytheon is, or RTX should have a good year. There are ways to invest in the growth of aviation and travel without having to take on the single entity risk of just buying an airline or even buying a Boeing or buying an Airbus and picking winners there. These companies that kind of deal with the entire supply chain, the entire ecosystem, and will benefit no matter who wins. That's the way I look in this because there is so much single name risk here.
You want to find more of Lou's picks for our stock picking contest for 2024, look in the notes in the description in YouTube in this video, and you'll be able to find that. Lou, appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Always a pleasure.